So let's get started. Okay, so the plan that I put together for dealing with procrastination is the following. Today we're going to talk about what the definition is. So everything that doesn't get done isn't necessarily tied to procrastination. All right. I'm going to remind you of the two types, like hoarding. There are two types of procrastination. We're going to talk about what the variables are, because that's why proactively we've spent a lot of time talking about individuality and comorbidities, the other accompanying physical health or mental health challenges that you face as an individual. And so, Lynn, yours will be different from Shoshana's, will be different from Donna's, will be different from, and that's true for each of you, okay? So I want you to find your individual self. Don't you fit into the format. Pick the pieces of the format that resonate with you and apply them to you as a unique individual with your own formula. So I say that procrastination, like hoarding disorder, and you as an individual, is a little like all those lovely perfumes, and each one has its own specific, unique formula. And that is true for you too, all right? So what is procrastination? Why procrastination as a viable behavior choice? All right, so you may not realize it, but if you are living with procrastination, it is actually a choice that at some fundamental level you are making for yourself. And we're going to look at what does it give you, all right? And then we're going to look at why we procrastinate, and we're going to talk about the fears that are most commonly behind it. But each one of those is going to be a topic in itself for a podcast as well. So this week's blog on Psychology Today that Sue and I write for, we try every week to post a blog on Psychology Today. And anytime procrastination comes up, we go blast. Like at one point there were 13,000 views. In another one there were like, we only posted it yesterday. We had 500 views the first day. All right, so you're in good company. I want you to know that. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about what we know procrastination is not about. And we're going to then have a closer look. We're going to spend probably a whole podcast on where did it start for you. All right. And then how is procrastination tied to, caused by, but also affects your self-esteem. And remember, self-esteem, it's an interesting word because part of self-esteem is the word steam, right? And I think it's kind of ironic that self-esteem within it carries the word steam, because that's where you get your steam. That's why it's so important to guard and protect and look at things authentically before damage and shame and self-blame. Or you set yourself up for blame and shame by others, all right? What are the concepts leading to avoiding success? What are the beliefs associated with procrastination? There's a whole bevy of beliefs. Each one of those won't be true for all of you, but some will be true for each of you. What is the process? Remember, we talked before about how hoarding has a process, step by step. Well, so does procrastination. We're going to I'm going to remind you again of the two mindsets, fixed and growth mindset, and what each has to offer. And then we're going to talk about moving forward, and we're going to do a few podcasts on moving forward, hopefully from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, because that's where you start to win. And you start to take less out of yourself by doing that. The other thing that's really interesting, and I found this helpful myself, I was always late by about 10 or 15 minutes. And it's because I didn't factor in my subjective time versus clock time. So we're going to talk about how and what is your relationship to time, all right? And then what do we do in Jane Burka and Lenora Ewan's book, plus other information that I have, plus 19 years experience helping people learn to let go of procrastination, but use something else. It isn't like stop procrastination and have nothing else to use instead. All right, how do we move forward in practical, usable, sensible, doable ways from procrastination to conscious action? Okay, ready for that? All right, good. So let's start with, what is the actual definition of procrastination? It comes from three words: procrastin, us. And that says belonging to tomorrow. The thing about tomorrow is, it's a little like later. It never comes. It's always on the horizon, all right? And so it means to postpone, prolong, based on a complex network of psychological factors and variables. What's the test about whether you're actually procrastinating? Does delaying cause you repeated, not one-off problems and difficulties, but repeated problems and difficulties in your functioning and larger in your life, all right? So let's remind ourselves of the two types of procrastination. One is maladaptive. And maladaptive, and is this you, or to what extent is this you? The standards you're using to gauge success or to gauge it being worthwhile to do this task, all right, are too high. If they're too high, you may find that it overwhelms you. You can't figure out where to start. And so once you can't get past that barrier, you distract yourself with some other smaller, less necessary task, or you distract yourself with something else like TV, reading, doing some other activity that you enjoy instead of the thing that needs doing, that's irritating you the most. Here's the thing. If you continue, to the extent that you continue doing that, this task that was just necessary gains increasing importance and priority. And as it moves up that continuum, it becomes something that generally is more of whatever you were feeling that made you think, I need to do that in the first place. It could be safety. If hoarding is involved in your situation, sooner or later, it will involve safety. Health safety, mobility safety, fire safety. All right, that is the direction. Because if hoarding is involved, there is no off switch until you become more conscious, all right, of staying on top of the things that represent risk. So are those standards too high that they defeat you right out of the gate? Are you often disappointed with yourself with getting started or how much you accomplish? And if you are, tell me what sane person would go back to that? And it would be even less of a sane choice to go back to it often enough to complete it. Do you see how those unreasonably high standards are a major problem? All right. One of our podcasts is going to deal with, at least one, perfectionism. Were you taught to be a perfectionist? Have you absorbed that from your family of origin? Or are you yourself living with some other factor that psychologically demands that of you? And how do we get handles on that so that you can put that in some sensible balance of control? All right? Is there a gap between your standards and how you view your performance? Can you ever be satisfied? Again, why would you go back? Why would you go back and back and back? Is it starting to dawn on you now why some of these things aren't done? Is it seeming to be more of a sane choice? It's not the choice you need to make in the long run, but can you see how procrastination is actually a buffer that saves you from something else? Okay? Are you prone to, is it your voice voiced over on that committee? You know, the committee in your hand? Has it become such a familiar list of things that actually you voiced over the original voices? And if you've done that, how are those now the very things that defeat you, that criticize you? All right? Because if you're prone to self-criticism, you're more vulnerable to feeling depressed. And it is like acid to your self-esteem. All right? You don't, we're going through this now. You don't have to stay that way. By the time we're finished this whole series on procrastination and perfectionism, you're going to have lots and lots of tools, but now is the time to identify. All right? Are you excessively worried about making mistakes? Is that something that it represents or it reflects something about you as a person, your worth, your something? Does it cost you something if you make a mistake? All right? Now, quite often in hoarding situations, I hear, oh, I might need it. How can I know if I need it? In the past, I've made a mistake. I gave something away. I donated it. I threw it out. And within 2 weeks, I needed it. How do we get you to a point of realizing that unless, whoops-a-daisy, unless it's the family car, what happened here? I don't know where I went. I didn't touch the mouse. Unless it's the family car you let go of, most other things are solvable. And we're going to look at some strategies for that as well. So having talked about all the ways it can go wrong, what are we looking for? Because we're not looking for perfectionism. We're looking for a healthy balance, right? And what does that mean? It means always, of course, always strive for your A game. But before you start your A game, what are smart, specific pieces of SMART goals? Have specific goals. in the book, go to the chapter on setting goals. You know the three: joy, fun, and play. Remaining a living, growing human being, developing human being, and yep, boring old self-maintenance work. The teeter-totter. But remember SMART. All right, remember the different, that acronym and what that stands for. Know what the target looks like before you start heading for it. And decide up front, what's the one thing that you need to do before you start any task if you're just healing? Somebody, help me. What is it? Yes, that's right. It is gauging how much steam you have in the tank. Because if you set criteria for a 2-hour job and you have half an hour time, half and less energy, less steam in your tank, you're automatically setting yourself up for failure on two fronts. A, you may not finish, and B, if you do finish, I guarantee you, tomorrow you are not going back to it. And you won't go back on day 3, and you won't go back on day 4. It's important. It's also important to set your chunks of work in 15-minute intervals so that you contract with yourself. You learn to self-regulate. Self-regulation is one of the most important skills, and it's a skill. It's not a characteristic. All right? When you start that second 15-minute interval, what do you have to do? Yes, you have to finish it. Why? Because I want you to think long and hard before you promise more time and more energy. If you make it 13 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, can you see where when you're learning to do this, when you're practicing and trying to get good at it, so that you can self-manage and self-regulate. If you fuzzy the edges, you've got nothing. Then you're back to where you started. Well, you know, however much time I have. When I feel like stopping, I'll stop. When you're just starting and you're just learning it, please don't do that. And don't overdo it either. Because way down the road, that's when you're really good at it. You'll be better at estimating how long a job actually takes. And you'll be better estimating how much of yourself you have to give that task. So you will choose more wisely. You will always end on an upswing and a success. And you won't always have to do it in 15-minute chunks, but you're a year and a half out before you're just flying on your own, not setting those time intervals and making yourself honor them, okay? So understand and accept that sometimes if you are, give yourself a pinch, check that you still have a breath. If this hurts and you still have a breath, understand you're like everyone else. Even those people you look up to, even those people who criticize you, all right? Even those people you're afraid will criticize you if they knew the condition of the home. You sometimes will absolutely make mistakes, all right? And there will be bad days. Some days you're going to misjudge that second 15-minute interval. And you're going to think you're running a marathon. I want you to learn from that. I want you to learn what I'm done feels like. So that you think long and hard before you set yourself up for whatever goes. Because whatever goes, based on what I feel like, is not going to get, that's not the way other people who succeed go at it. All right? And it's not good for anybody. Your performance depending on the context of what's happening in your life that day, that week, that period, all right, will temporarily be affected. So when things happen, when you're having a really bad patch and you know that it's a bad patch, it's not just a one-off day, it'll probably be 2, 3, 4 days in a row that you'll feel the same thing. You may have to scale back. If you're at 3 15-minute sessions or 2 15-minute sessions, maybe you're going to have to scale back to 1 15-minute session. And then see if you have more steam in the tank later on in the day. All right? Sometimes you do have to accommodate. So what are the variables that affect whether you are more vulnerable in a specific time frame or generally? And those are feelings, okay? Remember though, you need to know your feelings, you need to respect your feelings, but you also need to understand feelings aren't facts. Feelings are hormonal, chemical, and psychological meanings and reactions to things. Right? So how do we start to be able to manage feelings so that they don't repeatedly interrupt the goals and the plans we want for ourselves? Or, depending on how long it's been left, things we absolutely have to do for our physical safety and health safety, right? Fears are another, all right? That's another variable. What fears do you live with? If you're a perfectionist, when we get to that perfectionism model that we're going to do, there's a whole host of fears that perfectionists have. If you're involved in a hoarding situation to any extent, there are fears and beliefs as well that play into your functioning and how you process things. Hopes. What are your hopes? So when you write each one of these things down, I hope you do, then your homework this week is to reflect on each. All right? What are your feelings when it comes to clutter or when it comes to life in general? What are your fears? All right? What are your hopes? Look at how many of you, like 50, 60 people, come every week. All right? There's a lot of hope out there. Let's use it for your benefit. What are your memories? I once had a client many, many years ago whose kitchen was a safety hazard. And just to show you how family of origin or the meaning we apply to messages we've received, even if the messenger may not have intended that, all right, they also, probably the messenger also wasn't very aware of the effect they were creating. It became a Herculean task for her, all right, to do anything but fastest activities in the kitchen, because she was never allowed, from the time she was a sprout, all right, right up. The kitchen was her mother and her grandmother's terrain. And she was never allowed to feel to any degree at home or competent. All right, so it was a punishing environment. And every memory that she could retrieve was about being corrected, criticized, and basically shunned out of having any usefulness in the kitchen. All right. So what are your memories, positive, that we can use, and maybe negative? And ask yourself, if you were talking to your younger self at the age that you have that memory, you are a loving adult right now, and part of loving yourself is to pick up the mantle of parenting and to do yourself the honor of parenting yourself. What would you tell that little you? All right? What would you tell that little you about fears and hopes and feelings? And I want you to do that on a regular basis. All right? Because each one of us needs to reparent or carry on the parenting that we receive. The only person who can parent us 100% correctly is ourselves, because our parents came from a different time, they came from a different context, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent parents. All right? It was basically buckshot if they got it right all the time. All right? So let's pick up that mantle, let's finish the job, and let's nurture ourselves. What are your dreams? Here's where I want you to put up the antenna. Okay? Did anybody picture something that would qualify for a photograph in Homes and Gardens? Okay, this is where you cross-check yourself and say, whoa, okay, I think that might have a tad of perfectionism. So if that's what you really dream of, let's set mini dreams of stages in getting there. All right? What are your doubts? What are your doubts about yourself, your capability, your ability to succeed, any history with setbacks? And list those doubts too. Let's get them right out in the open where we can shine a light on them. All right? Because when we keep them inside in the dark, they're much scarier. When we get them outside, we write them down, we say them out loud so that we can hear it. It occupies time and space. Now we can start looking at them and realizing there's so much of a boogeyman in those fears and in those doubts, right? And how rational is that? How logical? We can start drilling down on that and realizing something that felt like 100% really is probably closer to 10%. All right, we can deal with it then. What are the pressures that you're feeling? How many people are under health pressures, mental health or physical health? How many people are living with some form of chronic pain? All right, headaches or skeletal pain. How many people are worrying about loved ones? How many people are worrying about themselves? How many people have lost their jobs or they're on some form of income support because of this COVID thing? How many people just chronically have financial difficulties and it's sort of like not having the right tire pressure and they're still trying to move forward? Factor it in. Let's see if we can't find some solutions for those. All right? Okay. So here's the positive, all right, about procrastination. Procrastination has actually been given a bad rap. All right? It is actually sometimes an involuntary choice, sometimes an unconscious choice, but it is a strategy to avoid uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable fears. And it does come from intrinsic feelings in some way, hopefully not totally, feelings of unacceptability. All right? Now, Few things are 100%, so don't get overwhelmed by that. But understand it. In what way are you judging yourself, disapproving of yourself, or letting that committee speak for you? All right? Feelings of unacceptability. Procrastination deals with the internal critic. It gives voice to the internal critic, and we protect ourselves. So the internal critic, quite often, by the time we're adults, we've voiced over the messages of the original critic. All right? And they're stronger than the feelings that procrastination causes. So procrastination is actually becomes a safety zone. All right? Even temporarily, sometimes permanently. So why do we procrastinate? We all who procrastinate do it for factors and variables that are too complex to put together into any type. You are not a type. It is your individual response to those feelings of unacceptability, risk, and the fears. Here's what we do know. We do know that it's not influenced. Oh, sorry. Turn that off. It is not influenced by intelligence or status. It is not influenced by men who slightly procrastinate more than women, oddly enough. Maybe that's why it's a well-known fact that men are far less likely to reach out for help than women. It says a good thing, positive thing about women. And the other thing I know from hoarding experience is that men, when they do call for help, it's probably the worst of the worst situations. It is generally pretty desperate, all right? The other thing you should know is that unless there are physical limitations, so you've got mobility issues or you've got severe health issues that cause physical limitations, we generally do less of it as we age. Okay? So where did it start? It started with feelings of vulnerability and inadequacy that started beliefs based on feelings from earlier life. So we're bringing something forward in our life and we're carrying it now, and it's continuing to have an effect on delaying us or stopping us altogether. What kind of person, here's a question to ask yourself, what kind of person were you academically before? Did the education system validate you, affirm you, or did you find that challenging as well? You weren't the best student, all right? And have you brought reasons to an internal level? Have you internalized those messages, those measures of success? Many, many very intelligent, capable people are not academic. Okay. The education system validates those people who are usually hard workers at some level, but they have an academic ability. Not everybody who can succeed, who does succeed, is academic, all right? Did you belong to a group? Were you one of the brainy ones? Were you one of the nerds? Were you a jock? Yes, ladies, you can be a jock or a Jill. Were you validated, or were you as for your social skills? Or were you more of an introvert and that started feelings of not belonging and not fitting in and not being worthwhile, right? Did you have difficulties in that you needed remedial work on some aspects of your academic life? And did you internalize that as there's something wrong with you or somehow you don't measure up? All right. What are you bringing forward to today from the past? And we're going to look at how that is being validated by the meaning that you're giving to experiences you have now, to the things you can do, feel you can't do, don't get around to doing. Is it because you're living an old script? How valid is that today? And if you're afraid of trying, that's not a measure of how much you can actually do. That's a measure of fear, how fear is getting in the way. All right, let's look a little bit at procrastination and self-esteem. So you need to adopt and hold on to the belief if you procrastinate. Right? You have to hold on to this because you have not given yourself another place to go. Those fears are getting in the way. And what you have decided, what you've bought on for believing, is that what you produce is a direct indication of your true ability. Right? The higher your ability, the higher your self-worth. You are only worth what you can produce. How crazy is that? How self-defeating is that? Particularly if you've put yourself in a position where you're afraid of success, fear of success, fear of failure, and fear of being controlled. Can you see any one of those three fears stops you at the starting gate? And now you're going to judge yourself as being unworthy, incapable, incompetent. Fill out all the uns and ins, all right? Because of a fear, not because of your true measure. And what you produce actually reflects your worth as a person. How many people here, okay, fingers up, nobody else can see, fingers up, okay? How many people here criticize themselves for not getting things done? How many people here find that anyone, all the fingers, oh, hands and feet too, okay. How many people here suspect that there might be a fear of success? We're gonna drill down on each one of these. We're not leaving it at fear of success. Fear of failure, fear of being controlled. Giving up control would be a better way. The more you operate from fear, the less you actually are letting yourself have control. You've just created a loop for yourself. You're stuck on this loop. Get off the loop, take a chance. Okay, so your additional homework this week is going to be to sit back and, not knowing what's coming as far as strategies, and we're going to run some tests, you know, during the week with homework, and there are going to be some experiments that I'm going to ask you to do over the next few weeks. How many people here are sitting there with a little knot in their stomach thinking, I don't know about this. I'd rather listen. I don't listen than do. Okay, first I'm going to think about it a lot. Then I'm going to think about it again. And I'm going to think, isn't there something else I should be doing on Wednesday morning? Then I'm going to think, gee, what did I miss? And I'm going to sneak on to hoarding.ca and I'm going to listen to it. And I'm going to say, oh, okay, maybe. All right. Okay. Just know that about yourself. All right. No, if you're showing up and you're showing up every week, I have every faith. And remember, I do this. I've done nothing but this for 19 years. I've got a lot of faith in you guys. Okay. So, self-worth, write this down. Self-worth equals ability equals performance. Underline it. And then under that put, do not approach. Do not approach. There is no exit from that. You are caught in a dead end. Okay. All right. Healthy balance. In order to develop, a little bit like running and a little bit like working out, okay? First of all, we have to build the muscle. We have to understand what to do and not do, and we have to start building the muscle, the skill muscle, okay? So for a healthy balance, what we're going to be working on is learning to tolerate, not do without, all right? To tolerate frustration. Frustration, period. Frustration with ourselves. Frustration with others. You know why? Because we're wasting a lot of energy. And we don't come out of any one of those three frustrations feeling better about ourselves. Our self-esteem takes a kicking. We need the steam in self-esteem. Don't waste it. Nobody's saying that there aren't things to be frustrated with. There aren't people to be frustrated with. All right? Ask yourself this, what can I control? And if you can't control it, let it go. Practice that one this week. If you can't control it, let it go. It'll have its own trajectory. It'll have its own energy. Let it play out and keep your energy for yourself. Okay? And those who love you the most, and act on it. Okay? Love you the most. If you are living with or you are affected by somebody who, when you say they love me, you have to say one of these two things. I know they love me. Okay? Or I'm sure they love me. Okay? You might want to just think about that. All right? And take a pause. And it's not that you are going to reject them or whatever, but be aware of how much of your energy and your self-esteem are getting spent on something that is a two-party job. Love is a two-party job. All right? You are only one of the parties. Now, that does not involve your cat, because cats rule. Okay? Dogs have owners and cats have staff. Cats are exempt. All right? Okay. So, learn to tolerate frustration and disappointment that you don't meet the goal you set. Now, that does not mean breaking up that second 15-minute session. What it means is sometimes, until you get to eyeball it better, right? Sometimes you will overestimate what you can do in the first 15 minutes and the add-on times of 15-minute chunks. Learn from that. Learn from that. The problem isn't you didn't do well enough. The problem is that was a bigger job and you estimated it incorrectly. Did we mention that we all make mistakes? All right. Little hint on that when you're approaching any pile or any task. The first thing I want you to do is to have a good look at it for a minute or two before you start approaching. And I want you to realize how diverse the objects are. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do to start to achieve a healthy balance is don't make it personal. All right? Don't make it personal. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about someone else. Improve your plan. Fine-tune the plan. What part of that SMART, the SMART component, the acronym, what part of that was off skew? Take back the power. Take back the responsibility. All right? You can't change other people, and if you didn't manage whatever in that time frame well yourself, that you were the factor that became compromised, just acknowledge it and adapt. Improve the plan. Maybe you need to do those tasks first thing in the morning. All right, right after you've had breakfast, a little bit of self-care. Maybe you go for a walk, do something that gets the blood flowing, and the thing you least want to do or you most need to do, you do first. That was key with that person I was telling you about earlier. All right, and what are the strategies you're using? Sometimes certain strategies are beginner strategies. And when you're getting into more complex things, for instance, paper's a big one, all right? Paper's tough. It is not insurmountable, but it is tough. And it requires specific strategies to get through it. Otherwise, it feels like a mountain. All right, like a mountain is sitting on you. Sentimental things. Remember, we were talking in the beginning about different types of collections, different types of groupings. You can be a standard. You can hoard standardly, and it can be indiscriminate. Every single thing gets put down. All right, chances are you're working with certain specific other mental health or physical health challenges. If that happens, learn from it, build that in. Know that complex pile, that indiscriminate pile, all right, know that is going to be harder work, more challenging. Don't do it when you're half dead. Don't do it when you've got no steam in the tank, unless it's a safety hazard. Then chunks and baby steps. If it's something that you are just highly motivated to acquire and hold on to. China's a big one. Crafts are a big one. Whatever you're motivated by, whatever you're attracted by, know that if you're dealing with, let's use an example like clothing, all right, and you love or shoes. Let's use shoes. Shoes are you know, if you love many people love shoes, and other people just have the shoes. Too many of them, they don't get rid of them, but they're not a big thing. So shoe, oh, you know, you're a shoe person, and we're gonna just talk about the shoes. Okay, know that that's going to be harder work. Know it. All right. I'm going to put gallery view so I can see everybody. And if it's your particular ilk, it's going to be a biggie. Okay, that's going to be tougher. And if it's sentimental, know that that's a biggie. All right, take separate strategies. We're going to go through those. All right. The other thing is, no matter what happens, just keep moving forward. With all of those other pieces of yourself, the 3 goals, setting the criteria, using Elaine's scaling strategy from the book, all right? Knowing what your chunks are. What are your 1, 2, 3s? What are your 7, 8, 9, 10s? What are the 4, 5, 6s, and how to make 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 probably has a higher chance of not staying around. Getting down to the 5s. All right, have a strategy that works for you and that has worked for many, many others. Okay. Just keep going forward, no matter what. Even though you don't achieve as much, when it's a harder task, when it's more uphill, I want you to love yourself and approve of yourself and validate yourself and treat yourself and respect yourself so much more. Doesn't matter how much is going out the door. So long, I'm going to give you a caveat in a second. It doesn't matter how much is going out the door, all right? It only matters that you keep going. Now, for those people, if anybody here is in a situation where they don't have a minimum of 33-inch pathways from the front entrance exit of their accommodation to the second entrance exit location, absolute free clear path. All right, you don't have to step over or around anything. Minimum 33 inches. Minimum 33 inches into every room in your accommodation that you use. All hallways, all staircases are clear. Then your first line of defense with that needs to be safety. Tripping safety, fire safety. Nothing can be around heat sources. So if you've got a fireplace, that has to be absolutely free and clear. Around the stove, nothing on either side that can topple or blow onto the stove. Okay, nothing exempt, nothing on the stove. If you've got one of those flat surface stoves, nothing on the stove that can melt or boil over or cause a problem. All right, if you're not using them now, but external heaters, your hot water tank, your furnace need to be absolutely free and clear. All right. And so what I like to say is at least a minimum of 2.5, 3 feet. Now, many homes, older homes in particular, have furnaces and hot water tanks that are almost against a wall. Obviously, you can't manage. Just don't put anything in behind that that's metal that conducts heat or that is combustible. Paper, wood, anything like that, furniture, no paints around any heat source. So that's the caveat on. And if you are in that situation, your first work is to get your piles so that at least you're safe. All right. All right. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit is avoiding success. So each one of us in our self-concept, our understanding of ourself, has to be aware of 2 parts. Me, what is me, and what is not me. And each one of us has to be pretty clear about what the beliefs are about what is me. Right? And I want you to weed out anything that is mean, anything that is excessively negative, all right, or anything that came from someone else and it's not working for you. It's not making you feel comfortable. And sometimes we have to be comfortable with our failings, with the ways that we're not a star, we're not, okay? And to the extent that that disrupts our life or somebody else's life important to us, well, anybody really, it's okay to acknowledge that we need to do a little work on ourselves with respect to frustration, anger, availability, whatever that might be, all right? But we don't punish ourselves. Just acknowledge there is something to do. If we have to say we're sorry to someone, all right, then we have to say we're sorry to someone, all right? We have to be humble about it. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to protect it. We don't have to defend it, okay? So beliefs, feelings we hold on to with certainty. What are our beliefs? Good, bad, and indifferent. All right. Remember this. Write this down. Feelings aren't facts. Feelings aren't facts, which doesn't mean that they're irrelevant. We need to know what they are, what our feelings are. We need to respect them. We need to listen to them. And we need to balance them with the other side of our brain, our rational brain. All right? We can have ideas. We can have feelings that aren't true. And we can have feelings that are true. All right? Avoiding success. We can have beliefs that aren't true about ourselves, our rights and our place in the world, and that can work both ways. That we are overly entitled, or we come at the end of the list of everybody else. We have no equal right. All right? We each have a right to respect, even when we're 100% wrong. When we're 100% in the wrong, we still need to treat ourselves with kindness and respect. And we need to acknowledge that there's work to be done and be willing to do the work. Not hurt ourselves or somebody else with our failings. Right? And we need to require others to treat us with respect too. We can have beliefs that aren't true about what we have to offer. Right? Oh, I have nothing to offer. There's nothing, nothing special about me. You're missing something. You're missing at least one something if you're saying that to yourself. All right. And what we can and have the right to expect. All right. Fair treatment is one of them. Kindness begins at home with ourselves. If we can't practice being accepting and humble and loving of ourselves, even when we aren't doing terribly well, compassion, understanding, we can't give that to ourselves. You've got to wonder where it's coming from that you can give it to others. There's nobody likes a martyr. Sooner or later, being a martyr or being noble, all right, that false nobility of spirit, people are going, it's just not going to ring true, and people are going to resent it. They're going to feel manipulated by it. All right. Avoiding success by operating with limiting beliefs based on faulty information, out of date information, out of context information. All right, so if it wasn't true to begin with, it's wishful thinking, negatively or positively. You do have things to offer. All right, or you don't have things to offer and you're trying to earn love and acceptance by stringing yourself out of date. It might have been true at one point in time, but our best self and our worst self are a function of the context that those events happened in. We're allowed to forgive ourselves. All right. We're allowed to change and adapt without carrying guilt or shame or anything with us. And we can't sit on our laurels. Today is a standalone day. All right. Today, we need to show up and be our kindest to ourselves and others, our most loving and accepting to ourselves and others. The best we can manage that day. It's a standalone day. All right. Out of context, what you did or what you believed or what you succeeded with here in a different venue. I hear this all the time with people who are big successes at work or big successes socially or big successes somewhere else. And they shame themselves with what they come back to. And then they make that, if you only knew the truth about me. And they say that to themselves throughout each day. Because you're a star over here doesn't mean you're going to be a star here. It requires a different mindset. It requires different skills. If you give all your energy away at work and with others, what have you got when you come home to yourself? All right. So you don't carry the success or the failure from one context to the other. You're allowed to be good at some things. You're allowed to have other things that are a challenge. Set SMART goals. Okay. Programming by others, and we keep trying to make those beliefs work. So, you know the stories growing up with mom or auntie or grandma used to brag about us in this respect, okay? Or used to say negative things about us in this respect. And we're still trying to flog that horse. We're still trying to pull off that persona. You're allowed to change. All right, there comes a point when you walk through a door and you define yourself. It's your life. You're allowed to do that. And if you were a complete, forgive the vernacular, screw up previously, you're allowed. You're allowed to be different moving forward. You don't have to carry the ship. Carry the wisdom. What did you learn? Always carry what you learned, but not if it beats you up and leaves welts on you, on your self-esteem. Context is so much of the validity of truth. So mitigating factors. These are the things we need to factor in, all right, to all of our fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being controlled, and other limiting beliefs that we have. Cultural norms. We do live within cultures. I'm Irish. Who said the Irish didn't have a culture? We absolutely do. If you're German, you've got a culture. If you're Spanish, you've got a culture. If you're African American, you've got a culture. If you're white Anglo-Saxon, and then it even breaks down by ethnicity. We got some rules born of our ethnic and our cultural history. Some of them are good, some of them aren't so good. Okay. We have gender roles. Anybody who thinks we don't have gender roles, check your paycheck, ladies. We get paid less. Or the same, equal, or more work. Do we accept that? We have a role. I didn't say that it's our identity. Understand that. We have to live within our culture because that's probably the mainstream of our network, and we all have a need to belong. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, which will end on I hope, a humorous note. Humorous but humbling. We have economic roles. If you're living in poverty, there are certain things that are not made accessible, even though they should be. If you're living with wealth, there are certain things that you have accessibility to. All right. You have some obligations as well on both ends. We have 24/7 demands that leave us quite often, every one of us, accept. That's not accept, that's accept. That sometimes we have 24/7 demands that leave us overwhelmed. All right. And procrastination can be a way to resist that, to defend ourselves against it. Can you see how procrastination has been given a bad rap? It can be like that safety buffer zone to save us from something that for us feels even worse. Now my cultural gender role story, we will end on this. I come from a long line of famous Irish cooks. Okay. I can cook. I'm not the best cook, but I can cook. And so when my family, we're all much older now and we're spread apart, but we used to have like large family gatherings. We also have large families. So aunts and uncles and cousins, and we'd all get together for somebody's birthday. There'd be like 30 people there. And one whole family in particular are particularly good cooks. All right, I've got a cousin who can bake like nobody you've ever in your life. Okay, and every other of the girls in that family doesn't matter what they put their hand to cooking, it's like out of this world. My sister's a good cook. My aunt's a good cook. My mother was deceased. Thank heaven she didn't get to see this story. And we were getting together for a potluck. Well, typical me, I was putting my time into something else. And so I thought, oh, I've got to bring something. So I thought, okay, what's kind of like a generic dish? Lasagna. And of course, I am embarrassed to admit the very first thing I thought about lasagna was, who makes good lasagna? And so I ran off to M&M, and I got, it's a big family, did I mention? I got 2 of their super deluxe meat lasagnas, right? And I brought frozen, and I brought them home. Oh, and I got garlic bread too. And I brought them home, and I thought, my husband said, oh, okay. And I said, no, we can't do this. And I got out one of my most beautiful French white baking dishes. Oh, you're ahead of me, aren't you? I can see people starting to go, oh, I know where this is headed. And they took the lasagnas out of the frozen, the things. metal things, trays, and I put them in, and I thought, that's never going to work, because when they start to bake, they're still going to be spread apart. Like, it's the dead giveaway. So I got out the mozzarella cheese and the Parmesan cheese, and I covered those two things like that thick in cheese, thinking the cheese will fill it in. Okay. I put it in the oven. It was, I got there and I thought, okay, I have that, and I'll admit to the garlic bread. Okay, I will admit to the garlic bread. Now, mind you, I did take it out of the plastic wrap. I did thaw it a little bit. I did put it in foil. Okay, I was going to admit to it. I wasn't going to sign up like they're going to put one and one together and get two, right? And so I brought this and I put it down, and I thought, done. Whew, okay, another disaster saved. And it turned out that it was the best lasagna on the table, and everybody was talking about it. All right, have you tasted Elaine's lasagna? Oh, you've got to have some of Elaine's lasagna. And I'm thinking, oh no, this is going to go badly. This is going to go very badly. And of course, I'm trying to avert eye contact. And so we're all sitting down at one point, and somebody said, you have to, I'd love to have the recipe. And then 6 or 7 other people chimed in, oh, Elaine, would you give me the recipe too? My husband looked at me, and I thought, if you want to come home with me, you better just keep that face straight. And I said, because I can't lie. I can't lie. And I said, I probably looked like a deer in the headlights as I was saying it, though. I said, oh gosh, honestly, it was just something I threw together in the pan. I didn't write anything down. I don't think I could honestly reproduce it. All true. And I got up at the end, oh, gee, that's right. If you do remember it, I said, there's a lot of cheese on the top, and that may be the secret. Okay, so as I'm going out the door, my husband looked at me and said, that was a close call. And I just keep your face straight and let's keep walking and get out of here. That time I got away with it. Anyway, so you can see where sometimes you have to improvise and adapt and accept who you are when you face cultural and gender roles. You don't have to fit in. You can take diversionary tactics and have a little fun with it. But keep your face straight. Practice in front of the mirror. Anyway, take care. I will see you all next week. And I look forward to hearing from as many of you as possible up next week about the fears, the dreams, and all of the other mitigating factors, okay, for procrastination. Let's make this personal. Take care. Bye now.